Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. Let's take a moment today to greet those who are joining us on Zoom. You'll see them on the screen. We can wave to them. All right, I'm Chris Cleveland. I am your service leader today, and my pronouns are she and her. And we are grateful for Terry's beautiful Christmas music and the other hymns that she'll be playing this morning. And we have Dustin and Janine in the AV room. So let's give a hand to our great volunteers. All right. We will begin today with some announcements, as usual. A lot going on here. And you can learn about all the things going on by looking at your communicator or your weekly bulletin that comes to you. And the communicator comes monthly, and it was delivered on, came out on December 1st. I think there might be copies on the, no, there probably aren't because there's gifts on the tables today. So never mind about that. But if you wish to receive any of those documents, the information about us, you can email us at office@lakecountyuu.org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, whatever those are. If everyone at UUCLC volunteered to help with something here, it would lighten the load for all our current volunteers. There is a list in the narthex of ways that you can volunteer at our church. Right now, we're looking for someone to be a music coordinator to help the RAP committee who plans our services to choose the hymns that we're going to use each week. And if you are interested in doing that, you can let Val Condi know. And today we are having a special collection, and also next Sunday, to support Pathways to Racial Healing, who held their 8th racial healing session yesterday and will be continuing to hold sessions next year. And it's a group that started in our own social justice committee here at UUCLC. So they provide racial healing sessions to help anyone to be more understanding of those among different races by using communication tools when talking with others about race. Your donation would be used to bring in guest speakers and promote racial healing in Lake County and to provide funding for our future endeavors. And this, all personal donations today that are made in the black box out in the narthex will be matched dollar for dollar by the UUA. So we have a matching grant from the UUA, so your money will be doubled. And if you can donate cash or write a check made out to UUCLC, but you put racial healing in the memo line. Covenant circles are groups of up to 10 people who meet either every 2 weeks or every month for a while, and to discuss topics of their choice. And as soon as we have at least 6 signed up, we will start a new group. So you can sign up in the narthex if you are interested. Tickets for the David Roth concert, which will be here on January 26th, will go on sale next Sunday in the narthex. And that will be cash or check only. You can buy online using a credit card, and you can see the posters for the link. There must be posters up out there. Keep in mind, keep these attendance to that concert in mind for gifts for people. And Henry, next Sunday at our 9:30 discussion, Henry will be leading, our president, Henry Millett, will be leading a discussion about the first UU principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And Pete has an announcement to make as well.
I don't trust this.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can you hear me? Okay. Speaking of Henry, he had an announcement he wanted to make today, but he couldn't be here, so he asked me to make it. And I was going to try to paraphrase and put it into my own words, but the way he presented it to me is so articulate and well worded and complete that I thought I'd just read for you. This has to do with the ministerial search. And Henry says, we offered Reverend Snavely a 6-month part-time sharing opportunity, and she is interested. We would consider other candidates during that 6 months. Tri-UU wants to keep her at full-time until August, unless we agree to commit to her for 18 months left on her contract with them. That counter proposal is currently being considered by the search committee to formulate a recommendation to the board whether to change our offer of 6 months. Accepting Tri-UU's approach would stop us from considering other ministerial candidates. If members wish to communicate their thoughts of this situation, they may contact members of the search committee directly. Kristen, I saw Betty, Shanine's back there, and Christy Millet. Henry goes on to say a town hall meeting after the service next Sunday may be necessary if members of the congregation want to understand the situation more fully, or if the search committee wants more input from members. Knowing whether members really want Reverend Snavely may help the search committee. I think this is pretty important. There are reasons, there are pro and con reasons, and you might want to be aware of more detail, and if so, make your feelings known to the committee, and we can have a congregational meeting if necessary. Thank you.
So Pete, if we have comments, we should contact the committee. Is that what you're saying?
That's what Henry wrote. So
Okay.
I would say yes.
Okay.
And you can do that by email or phone number or text. Any way you want to get to our number here. We'll be here to eat food later.
Okay. And speaking of that, there is a potluck after the service. So not only is there shopping out there to benefit our social justice committee, but there is a potluck. And even if you didn't bring food, there's usually plenty. So feel welcome to attend. Our speaker today via video is Reverend Kaaren Anderson, who is the interim minister at Vero Beach, Florida. She has served congregations throughout New York and Massachusetts for the last 25 years as a parish minister, and she will present our opening words today. Screens.
Good morning. I want to tell you this little story to start out this morning, and that's this. I have a son now who's 28, but when he was young, he studied Suzuki violin. And I studied with him. His teacher was 82 years old. And the second year that we were working with her, it turns out that she had studied with Dr. Suzuki himself. And that second year, it turned out to be the 50th anniversary of the Suzuki method. And anyone that had worked with Dr. Suzuki himself was invited to come to Carnegie Hall and have their students play on stage in front of everyone else. So we were all excited. My son goes to Carnegie Hall, and I remember talking to him right before, he goes out on the stage. And, was asking how he was feeling, and he was nervous, but he knew the piece that he was playing. And so, I felt like he was going to be okay. So we get up into the, auditorium, and we were just astounded by how brilliantly these children could play after studying, for a long time. And then sure enough, Nils gets on the stage. There's about 100 other kids. So we knew it would be, like not a big deal, or you're worried about something with him. And he's playing along. And my husband, Scott, is filming the whole thing. And Nils is playing, and you can see that he's playing, but then he looks next to him, to this little girl next to him. And then he keeps playing, and then he looks down, and then he looks back up again at her, and then he moves over. And Scott turns to me and he says, "You know what? I think that little girl next to him just peed on the floor." And we're kind of surprised by the whole thing. But then afterwards, we found Nils and we said, like, "Hey, how was that? Like, that must have been amazing to play in Carnegie Hall, right?" And Nils said right away, he said, "You know what? I was more worried about the little girl next to me who was terrified and had fear in her eyes than I was about really playing, because I don't really remember what happened." And I have often held on to that story because I think it makes me think through, what you want for your children, right? Do I really want my child to be someone who performs on a prestigious stage, or do I want a kid that really pays attention to those who are in pain and suffering next to them? And I think pretty much it's the latter. But one of the reasons I tell you that story is because I think it's one of the reasons that we come to church. We come to remind ourselves about what's important and what's not, what to pay attention to and what not. Welcome to our celebration of life. It's really a joy to be with all of you this morning.
We have another announcement.
Okay, can go ahead.
This is the Santa Loves Seniors. It's the last day to take a tag. All the gifts need to be returned by next Sunday. So this will be in the social hall during the potluck. So 4 more to go. We don't want any of our seniors to be left out. Thank you. Anybody else for an announcement?
Okay, thank you. UUCLC is an inclusive, non-creedal fellowship that works for a just community and fosters a lifelong search for personal spiritual fulfillment. Our Unitarian heritage calls us to recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every person, while the Universalist part of our tradition encourages us to extend love and acceptance to all people and all beings. You are welcome here, no matter your gender identity, your sexual orientation, racial identity, class, or ability is. We gratefully acknowledge the traditional lands of the Timucua Native peoples upon whose ancestral homeland we walk today. We are blessed with this land and vow to be better stewards of the land from now on. We have Erica Hewitt's words of welcome. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves, including pieces that we might be ashamed of. But all of us are welcome here. All of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet, because our hearts have gotten a little beat up this last week, or might have forgotten how to trust and open. Your heart is welcome here, no matter how bruised it is. We welcome you among us. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust that what happens here in worship is powerful and life-giving. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. We welcome you here. If you are here for the first time and are willing, please raise your hand and a microphone will magically appear to you to introduce yourself and briefly tell us what brought you to UUCLC. Okay, we have some brave souls.
Hi, I'm Rachel Bertolowitz. This is my husband, Sean Bertolowitz.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hi, it's our first time here. We live in Howie, and thanks for having us.
Well, great. We are so happy you've joined us today. And we have a potluck after. Feel free to stay for that and get to know some of us. Free food. Anybody else? Okay. Our chalice lighting this morning. The lighting of a chalice is a tradition shared by UUs all around the world. Celia is going to help us by lighting our chalice this morning, followed by us singing Spirit of Light. Terry will play the introduction, and like we did last week, we will sing it without her accompaniment. Yeah. As we kindle this flame, we honor and remember those who have passed into the mystery. Their brightness lives on in our vision, their courage lives on in our commitments, and their love continues to bless the world through us.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Send in thy heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the land, giving life the shape of justice. Whose hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Beautiful. Each Sunday, we make time for those who wish to offer a joy or concern. As we share joys, they multiply. And as we share sorrows, our burden can be lessened. If you would like to share a joy or concern silently, you may come forward now or to the table at the back and place a stone or stones in the sand to represent your joys or concerns. You may begin. If anyone wishes to share their joy or concern briefly aloud, raise your hand and you will receive a microphone.
Hi, I'm Katie Hughes. You might remember my mom, Jane. She's been here a couple times. She's 90. She just fell last Monday and she broke her wrist really badly. And when they were setting it, the skin tore so thin. So she broke her right arm, and that's what she uses, and her left arm shakes. So she's having trouble eating or doing anything, and we're kind of around the clock with her, taking care of her, but she's in pain. So please send some healing thoughts. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kristen Hughes. I'm going to jump on. I want to say thank you to everybody for your generosity, your welcoming and generosity last week. My new grandson was here with his mom and dad. Our daycare system worked great for them in the back room. Colin got away from his son and was able to play during the services. Many of you may have noticed. He really enjoyed Susie, your dancing. And he was waiting, we found out after he went back Wednesday for an interview at a job up in Frederick, Maryland. And he was starting another job tomorrow. So all of a sudden he's kind of like full of himself, trying to figure out what he's going to be doing the rest of his life. But it was a wonderful break, and thank you for all your help during Thanksgiving.
Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Mark Lester. I know that some of you have been asking because of what my wife has been sharing about my job search, and it's I'll piggyback on your son's great discovery. The job that I was hoping for, I've been told no, but I'm also waiting for the universe to firmly tell me no. But I also had applied for a second position that I recently discovered that I'm probably going to be interviewing for this coming week. So I appreciate your prayers and thoughts towards that. And I also wanted to just share that we're very grateful. Our neighbors, just because they're great, kind people, just gifted us several pieces of wonderful furniture that they just had piling up in their house and asked if we wanted. They were things we had needed for some time. So just wanted to put out there, we're very grateful for that. Thank you.
The universe answers sometimes, doesn't it? Hopefully it will for you. Anybody else? For all those things named, and for all those things that are too tender to speak, we collectively hold them in the light of our compassion and the warmth of our community. If there is anyone that you hold concern for that was not mentioned, you may name them aloud at this time. Keeping all that we have heard in mind, and let us take a moment to breathe deeply, relax, and do whatever brings you into a state of mindfulness. Terry's piano will return us to this room. Please join me in saying our congregational covenant, which you can find on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and through service we live our principles. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. It is our practice at UCLC to give generously to our church as we are able, and keeping in mind both its impact on our lives and our impact on the world. You may donate today in the wooden box in the narthex or any of the other ways mentioned on the screen. Remember, we have our special donation today for racial healing in the black box. And thank you for your donation today. Our first musical selection is Where My Free Spirit Onward Leads. It's hymn 324 in the gray hymnal. Terry will play it once before we sing all verses. Please rise as willing and able. Let's sing. You may be seated. Now our message.
So I want to start off this morning with a reading that comes from a question that was asked of Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's an American astrophysicist and science communicator. And he was asked, what's the most astounding fact that you can share about the universe? And he said this: the most astounding fact is the knowledge that the atoms that comprise life on Earth, the atoms that make up the human body, are traceable to the crucibles that cooked light elements and heavy elements in their core under extreme temperatures and pressure. These stars, the high mass ones among them, went unstable in their later years, and then they collapsed and then expanded, scattering their enriched guts across the galaxy, guts made of carbon and nitrogen and oxygen and all the fundamental ingredients of life itself. These ingredients became part of gas clouds that condensed, collapsed, formed the next generation of solar systems, stars with orbiting planets, and those planets now have the ingredients for life itself. So that when I look up at the night sky, and I know that, yes, we are part of this universe, we are in this universe, but perhaps most important than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect on that fact, and I look up at the heavens, I know many people feel small because they're small and the universe is big, but I feel big because my atoms came from those stars. There's a level of connectivity. That's really what you want in life. You want to feel connected. You want to feel relevant. You want to feel like a participant in the ongoings of activities and events around you. And that's precisely what we are, just by being alive. Here ends this morning's reading. So I have a good friend, Debbie, and we went to dance camp in 6th grade together. And she owns a dance studio in a small town outside of Madison, Wisconsin. Now, both she and her husband are self-employed and uninsured. And what you should know about Debbie is this. She is of solid Norwegian stock, like farm stock. She's beautiful and tough and strong and like can pick up a 50-pound hay bale and throw it around like any young whippersnapper. She lives about 6 miles outside of the town that, you know, she's near. And she and her family and 3 kids are kind of modern day homesteaders. They live off the vegetables from their garden. They eat the eggs from her chickens. They butcher their chickens, and they also grow hops for a local brewery. And not that long ago, she told me this story. So you see, her husband, Bob, needed oral surgery. And the 2 of them saved up to pay for the surgery because they don't have insurance, and that's often what they do. They pay for it with cash. So Bob went off to have this surgery, and when Bob was done with the procedure, Debbie helped him in the car and she drove them home, and then they walked into this mudroom that they have in the back of their house that's connected to kind of the kitchen. And she put Bob into a chair in the mudroom, you know, like had him sit there. He said he was hungry. He was holding on to this bag that he had with him. And she goes into the kitchen to make some soup for him for lunch. And all of a sudden she hears this like thump on the ground. And she yells out, "Hey, Bob, are you okay?" And nothing came. She yells, "Bob," again. "Bob, hey, you know, Bob." He didn't answer. She goes out into the mudroom, and Bob is slumped down into his chair. He isn't breathing. His pulse is gone. Now, at the time, Bob is 49. And Debbie says in that scan of like 30 seconds when she's out there, you know, assessing her husband who is got nothing going on right now, she's thinking through her head, you know, like, do I call the ambulance? But it's actually snowing outside. It's going to take them too long to get here. And then by that time, they're not going to be able to save him. Plus, I don't even have the money to pay for the, you know, for the ambulance. And then she says that the other thing that went through her head is like, well, can I get him down on the ground out of the chair? But it's a cement floor, so she's worried that she's going to bonk his head. Anyway, she says in that moment, like 30 seconds later, she says she just starts screaming at Bob. She's like, "God damn it, Bob, you cannot die on me." And she takes her fist and she pounds on his chest 4 or 5 times. And all of a sudden, like on the 5th to 10th, she doesn't really know, Bob takes this huge breath and he's just dripping in sweat. And he starts breathing again and comes back. When I tell that story to any doctor or, anybody in the medical profession, evidently they don't really believe it, that it's like a 1 in a millionth chance that you can get somebody back from all of that, right? So it's kind of an astounding story. And anyway, so my friend Debbie said that for the next couple of months following all of that, after that resurrection, if you will, Bob was profusely grateful. He said, "I love you," multiple times in the day. Debbie was his savior, right? She was treated with extreme joy and adulation, showered with occasional gifts and flowers, turned into a queen. And then, Debbie says, as months went on and things seemed regular and fine for Bob, her life went back to the regular, comfortable appreciation that they always had for each other, minus kind of that high-pitched volume so loud and deafening, keeping them attuned to awe that jolted both of them back to life. By June, Debbie says that she was no longer queen in her castle, but a regular wife who was loved by her husband, and they were back to their regular routine. So I've been thinking about that story since she told that to me, and it's made me believe human beings are a lot like Bob, all of us. Here's how. That kind of holy cow moment, right? That's incredible. We've all had something in our lives, I think, something that makes us feel, as one author put it, like we reach a state of rapture, something that offers a radiant ecstasy, something that makes your being absolutely ravished emotionally. Awe. Whew. That is intense, right? It is fever pitched. It is awesome. So we too have those moments where awe pounds life kind of back into us. And yet we do what Bob did after a while, don't we? We go back to our normal routines, right? We go back to what we know, and awe fades kind of into a resplendent story now told without the emotionally kind of ravished heart present in the retelling. Now, scientists will tell you there is a name for that. It's called hedonic adaptation, which is the tendency of humans to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative effects or life changes. So we go back to normal. And but there's more, right, to that. When you have death kind of like right up in your face, so to speak, whether your own or someone you love, when you are practically serenading the Grim Reaper, or you've just watched someone you love waltz off into the looming kind of presence of the Grim Reaper, you are immersed, rattled, kind of reminded of the wonders and mysteries of life itself, often even in your grief. And there in front of you is this wonderful and kind of like terrifying space that we can all inhabit at times. It's a liminal space where we reside between wonder over here and fear on this side. Between our wonder at life and our fear at death, where life literally pounds itself back into us. It's the kind of awe that happens when we realize we are really the only species on the planet that knows we have a limited time and space here, right? That we hold within us kind of a consciousness of the end of our days. And when that consciousness looms large, it can be a jolt to the present, to the gift of life, to the wonders of our everyday, amazing, crazy kind of existence here and now. Now, if you can sustain, though, that space for more than a couple days, there's another awe that kind of accompanies it. It is the consciousness of the expanse of time, of the billions of years in the making to our present and the breathtakingly prolonged continuum. We are in awe, kind of our little teeny weeny little ant lives being a mere microscopic thread in that expanse. And when you think about it, that's crazy, right? And every now and then we can reside in that wonder as sheer players in a cosmic theater. Every now and then we can reside there and have our hearts beat and expand, and we are in awe of all of that. We're in awe of that liminal space between wonder and fear. But friends, that's exhausting. And here's the rub. We humans often end up tipping more towards the fear side of that liminal space rather than the wonder side of the liminal space, mainly because our existential angst starts creeping in. Confronted kind of with such vastness, with timetables hardly comprehensible to our human brains that often can't, like, remember what we did 2 years ago, much less even, I don't know, I have a hard time remembering what happened to me a week ago. Brains that don't often know how to think through the ramifications of an era or a century because we ourselves weren't even born yet. And this crazy continuum of time of billions and millions of years, it can make us very anxious because we can't really process that amount of time. It is what one modern day scientist calls the reality of the existential bummer. And it is from that consciousness that our questions arise, right? Questions that have thrown humans into a tailspin, I don't know, since the recording of human time. Like, why are we here? Why does it matter? We are specks, even less than specks. We are the who's on the speck that live in Whoville that Horton, the elephant, can barely hear, but we are the who's speck on the speck on the speck. You get the idea. You can feel that liminal space kind of shrinking, can't you, when you think about it that way? I know I sure can. Further, as my husband regularly likes to remind me, in the end, we are all going to die. Did you hear me? We're going to die. I often say to him, yes, honey, I know. We're going to die. I hear you. But that liminal space for my husband, Scott, is not one he sits with comfortably very long. He often tips over into that fear side. He says to us in the family, anybody who's willing to listen, because he says this often, and it's an ongoing conversation. But he says, really, whose idea was it to come up with this death stuff, right? Seriously, couldn't you have thought it through a little more? Really, you have life over here, like happiness, joy, well-being, consciousness. And then over here, you have death, you have the abyss, you have nothingness, you have deadness. What would you pick? My husband, Scott, is really kind of hoping that science will come up with something before he dies that will allow his consciousness to remain forever. And as he likes to joke, and I'm serious about this, he doesn't even care if there's a body attached to that included in his equation. As long as he has his head, he's okay. His plan, though, is to put that head on a skateboard that he would then, according to him, all of us in the family would happily drag along like a dog on a leash while he tells us where to place him at dinner parties and the church and at the grocery store. And I told him once that when, I go to the grocery store, I'm going to put him in the trunk with his skateboard, and I'm not bringing him into the grocery store. And then he goes on and he tells me then, well, all he's going to do is yell out to everyone who's nearby that trunk what a terrible person I am, and how could I ever put someone in a trunk like that? If you haven't noticed, my husband, Scott, is a lover of that poet, Dylan Thomas, who says, I will not go quietly into that good night, but instead rage against the dying of the light. Except, seems to me, we all know Scott is not the only one where that liminal space is too intense actually to sustain. There's a great essay written by Sigmund Freud called On Transience. And in it, he recalls walking through a garden with the poet Rilke. And at one point, Rilke kind of like tears up in this beautiful garden, and Freud asks him, well, what's wrong? You know, like it's a beautiful day out. What's going on with you? There's beautiful plants, everything's magnificent. To which Rilke replied to him, well, I can't really get over the fact that one day all of this is going to die. All these trees, all these plants, all this life is going to decay. Everything dissolves in meaninglessness when you think about the fact that impermanence is a real thing. So yeah, Scott isn't the only one that is uncomfortable with that liminal space that holds wonder on one hand and fear on the other, and the undeniable human tendency to lean towards fear rather than wonder. And yes, when that liminal space tips towards fear, there is a raging of the light, because all of this is impermanent, right? All of it. The chairs you sit on, the building you're in, the trees outside, and certainly those fruit flies that you may get around your fruit. Now, they obviously have a quicker end, but all of it is gone. It seems to me that this natural leaning tendency we have toward the fear is why religious traditions actually have sought to answer humans' existential angst for millennium by promising, you know, heaven or purgatory or reincarnation, multiple levels of nirvana or a paradise with virgins. All of these religious answers, they do indeed soften that fear. They delude the worry into a balm to remedy kind of an anxious soul about death. On the surface, Unitarian Universalists don't concern themselves with a balm. This is a tradition concerned about living well in the here and now, not worrying about the next. That's not really our concern. And undoubtedly, some of us do believe that there is some form of consciousness that remains after death. But the question of what happens after death is still left up to each of us to decide on our own. And as a tradition, we don't appear to give an answer. The fact is, most of the time, we are all well and good with the Unitarian Universalist response that it is every now and then. We're okay with it every now and then that the Bob kind of awe comes around, places you in that liminal space between wonder and fear. The kind of awe that would like to respond to the religious answers so we humans can spend our days not raging against the light or caught in debilitating worry. Today, though, I want to propose that we Unitarian Universalists actually have an answer to death. We have an answer to calm the cosmic drama, mainly because of personal experience. It has indeed calmed me down throughout the years, so much so that I can put this kind of awe and understanding in my pocket as a kind of charm, as a reminder, as a blessed reassurance. Ironically, it's something that many religious people might scoff at, I think, yet I know deeply that as a Unitarian Universalist, the answer for us is not faith, it's science. It is science, actually, that bridges the gap from impermanence and indifference to meaning. It is science that reminds us that we are all inextricably connected to each other, to the earth, to the planets, to the stars. We always have been, and we're kind of always going to be. As Neil deGrasse Tyson stated in the reading I shared with you before, he says, remember this, he says, when I look up at the night sky, and I know that, yes, we are part of the universe, and we are in this universe, but perhaps more important than both of those facts is that the universe is in us. When I reflect on that fact and I look up at the heavens, I know many people feel small because they're small and the universe is big, but I feel big because my atoms came from those stars. There's a level of connectivity. That's really what you want in life, he says. You want to feel connected. You want to feel relevant. You want to feel like a participant in the ongoings of activities and events around you. And that's precisely what we are, just by being alive. I found this other piece years ago that also helps me. It's by this guy named Aaron Friedman. He writes this: you want a physicist to speak at your funeral. You want the physicist to talk to your grieving family about the conservation of energy so they will understand that your energy has not died. You want the physicist to remind your sobbing mother about the first law of thermodynamics, that no energy gets created in the universe and none is destroyed. You want your mother to know that all your energy, every vibration, every BTU of heat, every wave of every particle that was her beloved child remains with her in this world. And the physicist will remind the congregation of how much energy all of us have that is given off as heat. There may be a few kind of fanning themselves with their programs as he says it, and he will tell them that the warmth that flowed through you in life is still here. It's still part of all that we are, even as we who mourn continue the heat of our own lives. And you'll want the physicist to explain to those who loved you that they need not have faith. Indeed, they should not have faith. Let them know that they can measure precisely the conservation of energy and found it accurate, verifiable, and consistent across space and time. According to the laws of conservation of energy, not a bit of you is gone. You're just less orderly. I want to end this morning with this. A couple of years ago, I went to the Natural History Museum in New York City, and it's honestly like one of my favorite museums. And I've gone multiple times, but there I really had like this pocket kind of awe experience. There's a continuum of time that is representative of the cosmos. It starts at 15 billion years ago with the Big Bang on the second floor. And you work your way down kind of this spiral staircase ramp from the second floor to the first floor, following the continuum of time. And you have to make it almost to 1/3 of the bottom where our universe is even formed, and then much farther along the oceans, and then come along small life forms, and then finally dinosaurs. And at the very end, in this like 1/2 inch space, is human history. And there I stood, kind of wishing I could pull out a pocket of mine that I had that awe that I could keep with me. I wanted so badly to have a star in my pocket because it was there where the time and space were transcended, and I knew as firmly as I know my name, as much as I can hear the breathing of my child when she sleeps, or even the scent of my beloved's favorite shirt, that I wasn't just part of the universe. Indeed, I knew that I had the universe in me. And right there, it was that I wanted to take a star out of my pocket and in its small and sticky form and make my mark kind of on that continuum, like take it out and press it down. A representation that I am of stardust in my composition, as are you. Indeed, it was not an earth-shattering kind of bob awe, but a pocket kind of awe that holds you and keeps you and lets you into that liminal space so you can reside there a little longer, a little calmer, a little more assured of your place in the grand theater of life. So all those years ago, I didn't have a star, but I do now. Hold on one second. I put this little star, you know, the kind that when you play piano, they'd put on your piece that you had finally succeeded with. Anyway, I put this little star, and sometimes I put it in my pocket. Sometimes I leave it in a certain drawer that I know I'm going to see often. But I use it to remind me of that liminal space of science, actually. And I'm hoping that you actually can find some kind of star, something that maybe, I don't know, you put out part of the holiday and you just keep out for a while, or that you find a little star like this and you put it in your pocket. I'm hoping that throughout your time on this planet, you will pull out that star and remember you're not just part of the universe, but the universe is in you. And that you will go on with your day with a pocket awe that holds you and keeps you and heals you, that reminds you you are intricately and beautifully connected to the oneness of all, stardust, one and all. May it be so. Amen.
Let's take our stardust and rise to sing hymn 1051, We Are.
Morning star has born, the morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Morning star has born, the morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandmother's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the spirit of truth. Yours and brothers and parents of time. We are the daughters and sons of creation, sisters of mercy and brothers of love. Lovers of life and mothers of nations, we're singers of truth and keepers of faith. We're makers of peace and wisdom and ages. You are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandmother's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are spirit, the spirit of God. The morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Reach on us, born, the morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
All right. Celia, can you help me extinguish the chalice? Lighting a candle is somewhat like the beginning of life. If that is true, then perhaps extinguishing a candle is like the ending of life. But death may not be the end of us. We live on in the memories of friends and loved ones. The influence we possessed in life works on, moving persons and causes forward. Let us not forget that most candles have more than one light, and so perhaps may we. 'Tis the season of several holidays. The Christian Advent began last Sunday, November 27th, and marks each day until Christmas. The very first Advent calendar was handmade of wood in Germany in 1851. The Jewish celebration of Hanukkah begins on December 18th and commences the rededication of the Second Temple of Jerusalem in the 2nd century BCE by lighting a candle each of the 8 days. Pagans celebrate Yule on the winter solstice, December 21st, by finding and burning a Yule log. Kwanzaa is a secular event celebrated from December 26th to January 1st, when Americans honor African American cultural heritage through reflection, affirmation, and connection by lighting a candle each day. And December 26th is Boxing Day in the UK and Canada, Australia, where historically gifts were given to servants and the poor in the tradition of charitable giving. So as we celebrate this season of many celebrations, remember that we are connected to people worldwide. And apparently we are connected to the universe. So it's even bigger than the world, our little world. Our exit music. Oh, remember there is a potluck after and a sale going on for our social justice committee outside out there. Terry will play It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas, and feel free to dance and sing along as you exit. Thank you.